this week's drive, we get in a high-speed traffic jam, get through without putting a foot wrong, test tyres with a grand old man, and kick up some outback dust. All this and more in this week's Drive.
Banked in the straightaways. Let's go trackside.
We start this week with another round of the NASCAR series, this time at the Dover Speedway in Delaware, known as the Monster Mile, one of the most difficult tracks on the NASCAR circuit.
So gallantly streaming, and the rockets red glare.
We're shaking, so can I have an extra shot off the tee? And now we're done.
And
let's go racing.
Here they come, and let's go. Boogity, boogity, boogity! Go, boys!
Like Walter with the 15 car, he fought hard to get to the bottom of the racetrack. We'll see 2 or 3 grooves of racing, but everybody'd like to see if their car worked on the bottom here with fresh tires.
Yeah, the first couple laps, man, it is touch and go.
The yellow flag came out on lap 42. Joe Nemechek and Brett Bodine got tangled up along the wall. The crash ended Nemechek's day, while Bodine continued on to a 34th place finish. Mark Martin broke a 73-race losing streak by taking the Coca-Cola 600 recently. But his day ended badly when he crashed into Steve Park's car, which had hit the wall and stalled on the 125th lap. Martin had led from lap 48 to lap 124. Rookie Jimmy Johnson was 10th after most drivers stopped for fuel with 92 of 400 laps remaining, but he passed 4-time Dover winner Ricky Rudd to take the lead on lap 363. He stayed in front when Ken Schrader blew his engine with 37 laps left. It was the second victory of the season for Johnson, whose car is owned by Jeff Gordon and Hendrick Motorsports. Johnson also had the strongest car in the Coca-Cola 600, but lost after making mistakes, including overshooting his pit stall late in the race. His first victory came in Fontana, California. Fresh from his win at the Monaco Grand Prix and second place at Montreal, Formula One driver David Coulthard got a lift in New York. While in the city, he unveiled a 4-story high Tag Heuer billboard and discussed his win and second place. His victory ended a run of 7 straight races dominated by the Schumacher brothers, Michael and Ralph. It also ended his own 12-month, 17-race losing streak that dated back to Austria in 2001. Monaco could be considered as several drivers' home Grand Prix, but for David, the opportunity to stand for a second time beside Prince Rainier and his family, and also at the gala dinner afterwards, made Monaco a magical weekend on the Formula One calendar.
Well, it was difficult having him breathing down my neck for most of the laps of the end of the Grand Prix, but I think that adds to the satisfaction of actually winning the Grand Prix, because you know, Michael's clearly an outstanding driver of his time. He's won more Grand Prix than anyone else, and you know, I have the basic confidence that I can beat him, and it's great to be able to go out and prove that in such a prestigious event as the Monaco Grand Prix.
David's looking forward to the next event.
It's a track that we've gone well at in the past, but I think that our performance this season hasn't really particularly suited that type of track, so it may be a bit of a compromise this season, but nonetheless we love the whole event there, and it's, you know, clearly the goal is to go there and win, but if you can enjoy the venue that you're actually racing at as well, that makes a big difference. So this is a great period for Formula One.
Swiss watchmaker Tag Heuer is the official timekeeper of Formula One and a sponsor of the McLaren Mercedes Formula One team. The 4-story billboard, Tag Heuer's largest in the world, is part of a new ad campaign. The motocross tour moved to Launsdorf in Austria for round 6 of 12 in the title chase. Frenchman Yves de Maria led the 500cc event from the first corner, and having set the fastest lap times in practice, might have expected a clear victory. Belgian world champ Stefan Everts trailed de Maria by 1.5 seconds with 2 laps left, but managed to slash the Frenchman's advantage. Attacking on the last corner, the Belgian went wide and then cut in tight, carrying enough drive to avoid running into De Maria on the outside and out-dragging the KTM to the line. It was a brilliant victory for Everts, extending his lead in the title to 23 points over compatriot Monique Berfoots.
Well, my last chance was the last corner, and I went wide, and I cut off, and I passed him, and that was a great race. I'm so happy.
In the 250cc race, Frenchman Michael Pichon suffered an unusually poor start, but soon found the form that has taken him clear in the overall standings. The reigning champion cut his way through the pack, and after moving into the lead, continued to extend his advantage out in front to complete his 4th successive victory of the season and 5th in 6 starts. Ireland's Gordon Crockard was 2nd and New Zealander Joshua Coppins 3rd. Pichon now leads Coppins in the overall standings by 22 points. Having placed 5th in the 250s, Britain's James Dobb claimed 2 top 5 finishes in one weekend with a win in the 125cc class, giving KTM something to celebrate at their home event. Wearing the #1 plate, Dobb passed Italian Alessandro Puzzar at the same corner where Everts had passed De Maria in the 500s, and then reeled off the last laps to win by 5 seconds. Puzzar claimed 2nd and Philippe de Pasquier of Switzerland was 3rd. Francis Michael Machiot recovered from a crash on the first lap, but climbed back to 6th and still leads overall by 15 points. The very European sport of motorcycle trials went to Minnesota in America for the 3rd round of the World Championship. Day 1 was warm and dry, but overnight it got cold and the second day was less than 10 degrees, although the 15 rocky sections would remain fairly dry. For the second day running, world champion Dougie Lampkin found himself locked in battle with his Montesa HRC teammate, Takehiso Fujinami, with the Japanese rider trailing him by just 1 mark after the opening lap. But he failed to get through section 2 on the second day, and Lampkin knew his chance of victory had virtually disappeared. The Briton had to concede defeat as his unbeaten run came to an end. Fujinami was almost flawless on the second day. The Japanese rider had collected 8 points on the first day to Lampkin's 7. He negotiated the circuit with great composure to end with only 3 penalties for a total of 11, while Lampkin accumulated 8 on day 2 for a total of 15. Spanish riders took the next 4 places, with David Cobos completing the day for Montesa HRC by claiming 3rd place, 1 point better than compatriot Mark from the Sherco team. After 3 rounds of this season completed, Lampkin still leads the overall standings with 117 points, 22 points ahead of Fujinami. There are 5 more rounds in the championship, with a final in Japan in September. Australian Ryan Sullivan was to use some unusual tactics in the British Speedway Grand Prix in Cardiff and Wales. An enthusiastic crowd packed the Millennium Stadium as Sullivan, on bike 4 on the outside, lined up against fellow Australians Lee Adams on 5, Todd Wiltshire on 8 and Sweden's Mikael Karlsson on 7 for the final 4-lap race. Adams grabbed the whole shot, but too much traction saw his bike wheelie, forcing him to back off momentarily. At the end of the first lap, Sullivan goes from last to first in a daring manoeuvre that sees him go wide and right onto the wall to slingshot to the front of the pack. He repeats the move to extend the straight and finds extra grip, staying in the lead. With previous championship leader Tony Rickardsson of Sweden eliminated earlier, Sullivan, ranked number 4 in the world, took his chance to score his first series win after finishing 2nd in the first race in Norway. Despite coming back at his countrymen, Wiltshire was forced to settle for 2nd, with Karlsson 3rd and Lee Adams 4th.
I desperately wanted to win here and pull some points back with Tony, and I think it's been the perfect scenario, you know, and I'm so happy I've broken the drought.
The win leaves Sullivan tied with Rickardsson at the top of the world rankings, both on 58 points after 3 rounds. There are 7 more events in Slovenia, Poland, Denmark, the Czech Republic and 2 in Sweden, with the final in the Olympic Stadium in Sydney, Australia in October. Like all forms of sport, the actual contests are just the brief, visible results of intense work by many people over months or years. So it is for World Rally Championship relative newcomers, Hyundai. The team's top driver is Juha Kankkunen, 4 times a world champ and winner of 23 championship events, with a quarter of a century's competition experience.
We have still a little bit work to do before we are on the, maybe on the level to Peugeot, but let's say that close to the others we are already coming and things, and sure, that is possible, and that's what we are trying to do.
Periods between events are spent testing new parts and developments.
The idea was that I do quite a lot of testing and development work with the car, and if you do 14 events you don't have much time to concentrate especially for testing, and that was the idea that I do. But could be, because we were just talking, that it could be that I do the last 2 tarmac events as well, because I'm going to do some testing on tarmac, so it might be nice to do the rallies as well at the same time.
Team Chief Engineer Graham Moore is depending on Juha.
I've worked with Juha in the past, and he's 4 times world champion, so he can bring a lot of wealth of knowledge to the team, for sure.
At this not-so-secret testing session, the team were trying out some tyre and suspension settings. Note that Juha and his co-driver, Juha Ripo, are not wearing their flameproof overalls because, for the moment, they're not really going very hard. The test session is to give all the crews and technicians experience on gravel sections similar to those that they can expect on upcoming rallies. Once he brings the car back to the service area, technicians will download log data and both driver and co-driver will debrief the engineers. Day 2 and the team's Belgian star, Freddie Loix, will take out his car and try out still more tyre designs. But he and co-driver Sven Smiertz are dressed to go harder. The development never stops. Making one change may affect lots of other things, and all the drivers have an input.
Yeah, the boys are working very hard. MSD is working flat out, so it's very good as driver to see that everybody is that motivated.
Freddie also knows that winning won't come easily.
Let's say it's going to be quite difficult, but we have been improving so much the last 3-4 months that I really hope we can finish already somewhere on the podium on the end of the year. That should be a fantastic thing.
Concentrated testing throws up still more areas to work on.
No, I mean the drivers really, one day isn't enough. with the car moving on so fast, we're finding every time we put a different driver in for these last few days that there's some other area that, oh yeah, we need to work on that, and it's just that really. It's more and more testing will be for me the best thing we can do.
Armin Schwarz is the next man out. By now the team has found a good setup and the German can go harder still. But everyone knows the other teams will be testing and developing just as hard. Although their car is better than it was, it will have to be better still if Hyundai is to be a serious challenger for championship honours. The end of another day, but it looks like the work's not over.
No, there are still quite big steps to do. I mean, we are just doing research in many areas, and of course, if you're coming closer and closer to an event, you have to do more fine-tuning, but there's still much more room to develop further on.
By the end of the session, Armin is happy with the improvements that they've made.
Yeah, I enjoyed it much more. I mean, gravel is always something where you can slide very much, and I quite like that because it's not too static driving, and also the risk is much less than on tarmac.
We stay in the dirt and go off-road in Australia for the 2002 Outback Challenge. Greg McClintock and Eric Marquez bought their Jeep CJ7 all the way from Alaska to take on the Aussies in their own backyard. The challenge is based around the mining town of Broken Hill, the gateway to the Outback. The prologue is held at the Line of Lode, the fabulously wealthy mineral outcrop that provides the reason for Broken Hill's existence. The prologue gives the teams the chance to get into the swing of things and involve Broken Hill residents. The 40 competitors are divided into 4 groups, and they headed off to each of the competition's sites. Celia and Eugene Barry are back for their 3rd Outback Challenge in their Suzuki Vitara, or most of it. Manny Kafantras and Kevin Tapp get stuck in the Campbell's Creek mud. Brett Sawyer checks the water, and Dallas Rundle drives the Maverick across. Meanwhile, a local resident keeps an eye on proceedings. There's no stopping Brett Scrivener and Matthew Rice. The Outback Challenge aims to find the best four-wheel drive team who can handle different surfaces and show the skills you need to drive and survive in the back of Beyond. Roger Smith and the Land Rover lost time at the start of the challenge with a broken drive shaft. Chris Hummer upheld British honour though and went on to finish 3rd in his Rangy. Steaming along, Brad Scott has been making heavy work of the sand in his Maverick. Saddle Roadhouse and a time for the teams to regroup before a night drive to the next stage. This is the Goat Run, a traction testing, chassis grinding, engine boiling climb. Wayne Smith went on to finish second in the Range Rover. Rock Snowden made it look easy in the Nissan GQ. Winch and recovery skills were put to the test in the mud. Alan May and Peter Roberts came to a watery halt. They made it across, eventually. Alan McMullen and Stuart Blegg in the well-engineered Jeep Wrangler take on the mud near Nanduka. They also made a successful crossing of the lake. Roger Smith and Steve Hobbs went looking in vain for their winching equipment. What's the off-road equivalent to lost at sea? Another overnight transit stage took teams to the next section, the Cliffhanger. You could winch up or take Clay Mongan and Mark Beals' option of driving the bank after using the winch anchor to plough the creek's wall. Mechanical dramas stopped the US team's challenge, and to finish it off, Eric Marquez kicked his boss in the head and filled his ear with fine Australian sand.
First overall winner of the Warren ARB Outback Challenge 2000 is car 28.
So it looks like Alan and Stuart will be back in the Jeep next year to defend their title. Also passing through Australia in a four-wheel drive was millionaire adventurer Jim Rogers in his Mercedes SLK Cabrio Gillen-de-Wagen Hybrid.
I wanted to go in a sports car, but you can't go around the world in a sports car because you have to have clearance off the ground and you have to have four-wheel drive. Nobody makes a four-wheel drive sports car, so we had to make one.
Jim made a great deal of money working beside philanthropist George Soros and retired at the age of 37.
We've traveled about 160,000 kilometers, 93 countries, and we've been on the road for 28 months.
Rogers and new wife Parker Page began their odyssey in Iceland. Problems so far have included a jammed gearbox and a 12-day delay on the Sudanese-Egyptian border.
We were stuck on the border between Sudan and Egypt for 12 days in the desert, in the Sahara, getting across the border. She was not happy then.
This is actually Jim's second global adventure. He and a girlfriend rode their BMW motorbikes around the world 10 years ago, and he wrote a financial adventure book, Investment Biker, about that trip. We'll end this week on that adventurous note, but so you stay on track and up to speed, make sure you catch next week's Drive.